So today we're talking about extremist liberal progressives and the absolute joke which they are. So I've been playing City Skylines 2 lately, so I've been active on the Facebook group for them, and I think it's interesting how different games attract different kinds of people, right? So go play Albion Online and you're probably going to have a bunch of total savage kind of people that are, I don't know, maybe they fantasize about some kind of being gang members or something. I don't know. Albion Online has a bit of a savage sort of a community, and they can be obnoxiously cruel on one hand because that's kind of how the game is, but then I'll tell you the other side of it is there's a lot of people who play Albion Online who are from all over the world, and that's something that's pretty cool about the game. It has a global player base. A lot of Asian people play the game. A lot of people from just really every country in the world, you'll find them in Albion Online, and that's something I do like quite a bit about the game. But then if you look at a lot of the MMOs, they have a lot of I would say a lot of like gay people and stuff in there, and I have nothing opposed to gay people other than there's some MMOs where it just seems like, my goodness, these people have some kind of a weird fetish or something for weirdness, and I mean, it's just like all of their transmog is weird, and everything that they're into is all about like some kind of has an undertone of some kind of weird sexual kink or something, and that I really don't dig that. That's just not, I'm not opposed to it, but it makes me not really want to play the game, particularly if that's the theme of it. Whereas a game like Albion Online feels pretty, like people are a little immature in some cases, but a little more normal, I guess, maybe a little more based in some cases, but definitely get different flavors. Well, anyway, in the city building genre, I find it seems like you have a lot of these liberals in the city builder gaming genre, and you can tell because they get mad if you say something positive about cars because they're anti-car, or in this particular case, somebody said something about how, why are there no churches in this game? All right, well, you know what? That's a valid point. Now, I'll tell you what, I am not a religious person, all right? But if you launch a city building game that's supposed to be a super realistic city building game, and you choose to not put any houses of worship of any kind in there, well, it's obvious to me that that's either an oversight or you are deliberately skirting something which you think might be controversial. And I understand the reasoning behind that. However, I also have to point out that a lot of other successful games, like SimCity 4, for example, had things like houses of worship in them. They had churches you could build. There were a few different styles, maybe one that looked like a mosque, one that looked a bit like a synagogue, one that looked like a Christian church, and whether they were specifically called that or not, there were tools in the player's tool chest which could be used for their imagination, to reflect their creativity and to reflect the style that they wanted their city to have, right? Well, anyway, so this conversation takes place on the Facebook message group there for City Skylines 2, and people are talking about, why are there no churches? And it turns into a total, absolutely ridiculous, savage argument. People are saying things like religion has absolutely no value. It does not contribute in any way to culture on any level whatsoever. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm sorry? You're telling me that religion has no cultural value? What do you value? What do you think culture is? Because when I look at the history of the world, I see a lot of different religious legacies, and yes, it's true, religion has caused a lot of pain and suffering, but you know what? That pain and suffering, it comes from the exact place where those liberals are coming from. It comes from the desire to be right, the belief that you're right, and the belief that you have a right to impose your value set on everyone else, whether they agree or not. And that belief that anyone who doesn't agree with you should be eliminated. That has been the foundational problem that has made religion toxic and dangerous for thousands of years. And that's also the thing that is making activist liberals toxic and dangerous today. Because there are people who identify as atheists, people who identify as progressive liberals. It doesn't really matter what they call themselves, but these people are a threat to actual pragmatic liberalism. They're a threat because they want to eliminate anyone who disagrees, anyone who sees things different than they do, because they think that they've found some sort of supreme truth which gives them the right, or they think should give them the right, to eliminate everyone else's rights so that they can force everyone else to live a better life. We see that in people who think that gasoline-powered cars should be outlawed, or that everyone should be forced to ride public transportation, or that churches should have no place in a video game. Well, I think it's interesting. It really is fascinating that the exact same people who would be offended to see a military base in a city builder or a house of worship appear in a city building game probably have no problem playing a violent video game where they're shooting up a bunch of enemies. So you can take a virtual weapon in a video game like Grand Theft Auto. You could probably pretend to be murdering people, right? That doesn't offend them for some reason. But something that's rooted in tradition, suddenly that bothers them. You know, I don't know exactly why that is, but I think it really boils down to the fact that in the liberal subculture, there is an absolute hatred of traditional authority. Now, ironically, these people really want to, they want to be able to essentially impose their will on other people, right? So they're not anti-authority exactly. What they're against is other people telling them what to do. You see? And we see that in human nature all the time. There's people who hate being told what to do. They hate having other people impose their will on them. But when they get a little bit of power, then suddenly they really enjoy the idea of playing God. You know, I think, for that matter, I see this in the corporate world. I see this in upper level managers. You know, I think it's interesting how you'll have a manager in an organization. They will destroy other people's careers. They won't bat an eye. They treat people like livestock. They're just a tool for achieving a financial goal, right? But those same people, when their superiors crack down on them, suddenly they will start playing the victim. I think that's pretty interesting. It's interesting how people have a way of, you know, they can't see how hypocritical they potentially are. And it goes back to that foundational belief that you're good. You believe you're good? Do you? Because if you believe that you are intrinsically good to the point where you don't feel like you need to challenge your own premises at all, you don't need to consider the possibility that you're wrong. You don't need to consider the possibility that maybe other people have something to contribute that you don't have. You don't want to consider the possibility that your life could possibly be enriched by seeing good in other people. Because you think that you have got it all. Well, does it really matter? Does it really matter if you are hyper liberal or hyper conservative or hyper religious? See, you're still making everything about yourself, and you're still trying to censor and destroy the voices of everyone who's different than you. Now, we should live in a world where people are not allowed to do each other harm, and we should always strive to be advocates for other people who cannot advocate for themselves. And certainly in the world we live in, there's a lot of challenging questions to be asked and challenging situations that we have to face. And a lot of those things don't have sure answers. Because when you have so many different people with different ideas, often conflicting beliefs, sometimes there's no way to really strike a perfect equilibrium between all of them. And yet the solution can't be blanket censorship and hatred of all things that are traditional. It should always be possible for us to look back at things that aren't good, things that are problematic, and say, we don't endorse some aspects of our past, some aspects of our beliefs as they've been. But we also celebrate the strength that those things give us. So if religion has caused pain and harm and it's cost people their lives in the past, then we don't need to embrace that. We don't need to endorse the destruction of human liberties. But we also should celebrate the ancient traditions that have made us what we are, and that human journey that has brought us from the caves to the stars. You know, I think video games are a really great way for us to experience these things because, you know, the more I think about it, you can play a game that lets you experience warfare in all sorts of different periods of history. There's so many different things that you can experience, and you can do so in a safe environment where no one is harmed. And you can celebrate the positive things without being harmed by demons of the past. See, we can look back, we can celebrate the Roman Empire at its peak without celebrating the stains like human slavery. See, we can celebrate the contributions of religion without necessarily endorsing the harm that religion has done. We can explore ideas and bring them to life without being bound to any one of them. And that's great, but it's not great when people start to polarize in the name of progressiveness and start to exclude things in the name of being inclusive. Because if you're going to be inclusive, you have to include everything. You got to represent all the different ideas, not just the one that you think is satisfactory. And yes, sometimes that means that we embrace things that aren't good in their entirety, just because they're part of the human experience. You know, right here, I'm walking through a Halloween-themed dungeon, and what do you think? What do you think Halloween is really about? Isn't it about evil? That's a general idea, right? Unless you're a little bit twisted and perverted, I don't think you'd want to live in a world where everything is dominated by the undead and ghoulish spirits and things of that nature, right? But Halloween has a story to tell. It's rooted in history. It's rooted in religion. It's rooted in superstition. It's rooted in the Celtic mysticism. It's rooted in the Christianization of pagan rituals. There's a lot of history that kind of came together to make Halloween what it is. And in the modern world, it's just a sort of a cute holiday where we, we celebrate silly symbols of evil in a cutified form. It's a mixture of harvest themes and demon possession, I guess. It's Halloween evil. Maybe. Should we abolish it? Or should we embrace all the things that have made it what it is? Because it's one of our many traditions. It adds flavor and richness to life. You don't have to love it. You don't have to even celebrate it. It's okay if you don't want to. Nobody's harmed by you not celebrating Halloween, but don't go out there and rage against somebody because they want to put on a Halloween costume. You know, I just think it's fascinating that I'd find the same basic foundational problems manifesting themselves in religious people and in non-religious people. It turns out these character flaws, these are human problems. And being free from religion doesn't eliminate the human nature problem. Because people want to manipulate other people. It's in their nature to do so. People want to play God. It's in their nature. And it doesn't matter whether you want to play God because you think that you're at the level of God, or if you want to play God because you think that you are God's messenger on earth. When you want to go out and essentially, in so many words, tell other people who don't agree with you that they're going to hell. Or maybe in the case of liberal progressives, that they don't have a place in society if they don't agree. I don't know. That same attitude, that spirit of not being willing to include ideas that are different than your own, that is something that we shouldn't have any tolerance for. And I hope that for many years to come, we still live in cities where you'll find churches and cathedrals and mosques and synagogues and places of worship. And I don't go to those places because I don't believe the teachings of the church. I'm not a religious person. You see? But that doesn't mean that those places shouldn't exist. Doesn't mean that I don't want to see those places. Because I do. Just like maybe I'm not a fan of Chinese food, but I still want there to be Chinese food, right? Imagine if we said that the best way to enforce cultural inclusiveness is to eliminate all foods that represent a specific culture and create a homogenized, universal food type. You get to go get your food packet, eat your food packet. It's a composite material that will give you the necessary nutritional value. We're not going to have any American food. We're not going to have any Chinese food. We're not going to have any Thai food or Indian food. None of that, right? We're just going to have human food. It's just like the bag of rat food that I get to feed my pet rat, only it's formulated for humans. Eat your pellets. Because, you know what? Pellets are inclusive of everybody. You think that's the world we want to live in? That's the world that the Borg in Star Trek wants us to live in. A world where no one has any sense of individualism. And they're all forced to be part of a collective because, as the Borg sees it, taking away people's individualism by force is ultimately in their best interest. So, the Borg knows best, and there's no need for, there's no need to listen to the desires of mortals when you're a god. So there's that. So let's be careful. I really, really like a quote by Judge Learned Hand. He said, "The spirit of liberty is the spirit that isn't too sure that it is right." And that is the spirit that we need to guide ourselves by, especially in these times when everyone seems to have an idea of what's right. We need to understand that there's always two sides to every story. No matter how vehemently we may think that we want to disagree with other people, they have a point. And if we want to contribute to a more balanced, fair, equitable world, then we need to hear all of those opinions, including the ones that we think are uninclusive and even harmful. And we need to understand that they all deserve a place at the table. Doesn't matter who you are. And that's been the challenge of true pragmatic liberalism since the beginning of time. Because if you're truly liberal, then here's what it means. It means you're going to be alone most of the time. Because you're going to take the side of people on every side. You're going to see value in everyone. And that means that you're going to appreciate people who will never appreciate each other. And when people find out that you see value in the other side that they hate, they will write you off. And in my experience, I find that religious people will write me off because I'm not religious. Because from their perspective, if I am not their religion, then I'm anathema. I'm essentially just fodder on its way to hell. And liberal people will write me off because I'm not liberal enough, in the sense that I don't want to destroy people who disagree with me or take away their voice. So quite often, it seems to be the case, I'm not liberal enough to satisfy the activist liberal. I'm not conservative enough to appease the militant conservative. Being moderate tends to satisfy no one, because people want you to align with their tribe. They want you to validate their position. And if you're not willing to do that, then they will eventually resort to exclusion and to hate. So quite often what that means is you have to accept a path that's largely alone. where you will be by yourself. You will respect other people, but you will also have to accept the fact that they will never respect you. It's kind of like admiring wildlife at Yellowstone National Park. You admire the wildlife, and you also understand that you will always have to admire it from a distance, because if you go out there and you think that that wildlife is your friend, it will destroy you. That bear will end your life if you put yourself in the wrong position. Its nature will work against you, and it will win that battle. You cannot afford to pick that fight with the bear. So you have to respect nature by staying out of its path sometimes. Sometimes you have to protect nature by defending yourself from it. Even if you love it, you can't allow it to destroy your life. And yet, you can still respect nature. You can still love what it is as it is. You can try to do it no harm, and you can try to contribute as much as possible to balance in nature, to harmony with nature. And yet, the wild animal is not your pet. It is not your friend. It is just itself. And it's hard. It's hard to have that lonely path, because we all want to be part of something greater than ourselves. We all want to be included. And that true willingness to take a path which is representative of, if you will, the middle way, that's rare. Very few people choose that. Most people wind up going ditch to ditch, from one type of extremism to another. So, the question is, do we have the strength to have that spirit which respects others and does not require that respect to be reciprocated? And it's not easy. But what I will say is that most of the people that are waving a banner saying that they are liberals today, they don't know what liberalism is. Because true liberalism is rare, and it's not a populist movement. It's not about putting something catchy on your Facebook profile picture. It's not about jumping on a bandwagon and being a militant activist for the latest thing. It is a lot less glamorous than that. Just learning to appreciate a whole array of different things, many of which will never appreciate you in return. Well, anyways, good luck on your journey, wherever your adventure may take you. Till next time, thank you for watching.